So today we're going to talk about what would happen if you were to actually starve your colon, your large intestine, of the fiber it really needs to support your colon cells, because we all know that fiber is essential. It's almost classified as a nutrient. There's just a lot of confusion in this area and a lot of questions that people have. And so we're just going to bring up these questions. What type of food would our bodies be best designed to consume? Are we really herbivores, plant eaters? Okay. Are we carnivores, meat eaters? Or are we omnivores, a combination of both plant and animal? Now, I want to touch on that for just a little bit because it'll kind of give you a little foundation of what I'm going to talk about next. If we take a look at a cow, which is an herbivore, cows are not designed to consume meat. They were designed to consume grass. And of course, we end up feeding them grains, right? More than grass, which makes a huge difference in the health of that cow, which I want to bring up since I have cattle and I was involved in a study comparing grass-fed to grain-fed cattle. So this is very interesting. Now, if we just take the pH of the stomach of a cow, when it consumes grain, it's 10 times more acid than if it consumes grass. So typically the pH of the cow's stomach should be about 6.4. That's almost 7, and it's almost neutral, okay? But when a cow starts consuming grain, the pH changes. It becomes 10 times more acidic. It's right around like 5.3, okay? And when you talk about pH, every whole number when it comes down, like from a 6 to a 5, is not just one number, it's by a power of 10. And there's a big problem nowadays with cows consuming grains. They develop a common condition called subacute ruminal acidosis. This is a situation where their microbiome is creating a very acidic condition, and this creates a lot of inflammation. And it's already a known factor that cows that are raised on grains have a more inflammatory profile in their meat. In other words, the omega-6 to omega-3 is really off. On grain-fed, it's like 8 to 1. Okay, so very small amounts of omega-3. Grass-fed is like 3 to 1, which is better. In the study that I participated in, my beef came to almost a 1 to 1. So it was definitely not an inflammatory type meat. It was definitely an anti-inflammatory meat because of very low amounts of omega-6 fatty acids. Because you have to realize that the grains are very heavy in omega-6. This could also explain any studies that were done on meats in general. They're probably not doing studies on grass-fed, grass-finished meat. They're doing on the grain-fed meat, which is in some cases inflammatory. So I just wanted to differentiate that one point because it's really what that cow ate that determines the health of that meat. When we take a dog or a cat, they're more carnivore and wolves eat meat, but they also have been known to eat other things too, whatever's available, grass, acorns, things like that. But typically they're carnivores. And a dog or a cat has an extremely acidic stomach. It's between like 1.05 to 2.2. Okay, that's like battery acid. Humans also have a pretty acidic stomach, not quite as acidic as a dog or a cat. It's like 1.5 to 3.0. The fact that our stomach is that acid gives clues on what we should be eating. And so humans have more of a digestion that is a mix. Okay, it's omnivore, both animal and plant. You can actually put a human on just plant foods and they can survive. Probably not as well as they should, but you can also put a human on a carnivore diet and they can also survive as well. I'm bringing that up to bring up a point on this confusion of what should people be consuming. Well, I always like to compare that to what diet would be the absolute worst diet for man. Okay, well, it just so happens to be the diet that man is on now. It's called the SAD diet, the standard American diet, where they're doing animal products and plant products, but the definition of their plant products are really grain products. So I want to just put a magnifying glass on plants, right? A grain is a plant, but if you're consuming mainly grains, and that's really what a typical American consumes, 65% of all their calories in the form of grains. Of course, it's mainly refined grains, but whole grains have a lot of other issues with them. Gluten, other anti-nutrients like phytic acid, which blocks zinc and other minerals, tannins, oxalates, anti-enzyme factors. It is also true that plants also have some anti-nutrients as well. But I think really what happens if you start someone out on grains, you will start creating damage in your gut. And now, because of that damage, any fiber food is going to be a problem for you. This is why I always recommend if someone has gut damage, they're probably not going to be able to handle all this vegetable fiber salad. Okay, so they should back off on that. The question is it because of the fiber? Is the fiber doing that? Well, I think it's the anti-nutrients in the fiber. Of course, fiber relates to the microbiome. Okay, now I want to bring up the actual subject that I wanted to talk about, the microbiome in relationship to what it eats. If you look at some of the standard textbooks, they usually omit one key function. They don't really talk about it very much, okay? They'll tell you that the large intestine is primarily there to reabsorb water and form and store your feces or stool, okay? But what about all those microbes? What are they doing? They're fermenting, and they're making things from that fermentation. In the fermentation process, there are small chain fatty acids that are made that are feeding your colon. You also have vitamins that they're making, certain acids, secondary compounds that help your immune system. So the small intestine is about 25 to 23 feet, but the large intestine is about 5 feet. And what happens when you start off the microbes with fiber, they can eat other things. They can even ferment protein. That's right. They can ferment collagen, cartilage. And just so you know, a good portion of bone is collagen. When someone is on the carnivore diet, okay, they're just eating meat, no plants, those microbes are adapting to digest that protein. And this explains why many carnivores, if they're doing it right, are thriving. In fact, they're doing much, much better. Microbes are amazing. They can adapt to different diets. But the point I'm going to bring up is you're not going to kill all your microbes off if you just avoid all plants for a while. But I want to bring up this really important point, okay? When you consume grains or eat animals that have consumed grains, you're usually going to end up with inflammation in your gut, especially if you're genetically predisposed. And then that is going to make it very difficult to digest any plants at all. And I think a lot of people are on the spectrum where they might not have any damage to a little damage to some major damage in their colons. And so some people can handle digesting different plants like salads and things like that, large quantities, kind of like myself. Yet other people on this spectrum, well, you give them plants and they just get bloated, they get constipated, okay? So they should be not consuming plants for a while. And then you get these people in between, which they can handle plants, but in a fermented state. I'm talking about the sauerkraut, the kimchi, pickled vegetables, because what do we have there? We have a plant like cabbage, for example, that's fermented and has a lot of additional microbes that can actually help you with your gut. Why? They found that the more diversified microbes you have, the better the digestion, the better the health. So we have this wonderful fermented food that has prebiotic, it has some fiber, already broken down. It has a lot of microbes, which are very beneficial, that can start to seed and help your colon. I don't know if they can be cultured and develop into more microbes, but those microbes by themselves can actually add a lot of benefits. Plus, you have all the additional vitamins in fermentation, right? You have K2, you have B12, you have biotin, you have other B vitamins, you have certain acids that are very beneficial. The other cool thing about eating fermented foods is this, that when you ferment things, you immediately start decreasing these anti-nutrients. You lessen the oxalates, the lectins, the phytic acids, the tannins, and you make other things in that food more bioavailable, like the proteins. So here's some tips. Preferably, if you eat animal products, go for the grass-fed, grass-finished, if possible, because the more grains, the more inflammation, the more problems. If you are a vegan or a vegetarian, don't consume the grains, okay? Consume other plants, like vegetables, for example. If you have severe digestive problems, you probably have gut damage and you're going to have to do carnivore for a while, but just make sure that you do the grass-fed, grass-finished. Why? So that way you don't have that omega-6 grain effect that has been passed over to that animal. If you have marginal problems with your digestion, maybe you're going to benefit from fermented vegetables. So that would be like the kimchi, the sauerkraut, and just have that with your meals. Now, if you don't have any digestive problems at all, you may benefit more from having a combination of the grass-fed, grass-finished animal products with the plants, but not the grain category of plants. I hope this video cleared up some confusions on some of these topics. There's a lot more to say about that. But if you haven't seen my video on the microbiome, which is a very important and interesting topic, I put that video up right here. Check it out.